I think that today has been, truly wonderful. I think that the panels that have come before have been great. The evening was great. Just serendipitous hallway conversations have been, really wonderful. And I think that, this seems like the type of group that isn't just like taking notes, but really creating action plans. And so we have this panel right now and then another closing one. And please, to the extent that you can, devote as much energy as you did have at 9 a.m. Just pretend it's the morning, because there's nothing that, this is a very strong one, as you'll see. So I'm excited for you all to join us in this conversation about inclusive innovation on how we're co-designing AI tools and co-designing the solutions, right? So we come at this conversation with the belief in the necessity of incorporating diverse perspectives in developing products and services that reflect the diversity and experiences of the people who are using them, right? And really the belief in the criticality of choosing the right partners and aligning with tech mission and vision, and the belief in the need to open solutions to further accelerate and enable inclusive innovation with AI. So I'm going to very briefly introduce our panelists and then ask them to introduce themselves more fully. So we have Shimona Simpson, the founder of Parity, Maria Langworthy, founder of Campus Evolve, Jana Ibrahim, a student at the University of Central Florida, and Elizabeth Riley, the executive director of AI Acceleration at Arizona State University. So I'd like for each of you to more fully introduce yourself in like a couple minutes, your position, your organization, your passion when it comes to AI, and then I'll pop it over to the first question. So why don't we just go down the row?
Sure. But you should introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm Charles. I'm the Vice President for Research Policy and Advocacy at Complete College of America. Thank you so much.
It's a great organization. Maria Langworthy, co-founder with my wonderful co-founder, Mary, of Campus Evolve. We started about a year ago developing generative AI solutions for higher education with the starting use case of student success within institutions. Now we're expanding to sort of not quite P, but late high school through post-secondary into the workforce, expanding a generative AI conversational tool to really support their success with wraparound services. We came to this after many years at Microsoft, where we were in Microsoft Education, working myself in new product development and AI, and Mary as a principal data scientist working with data from millions and millions and millions of users of the Microsoft suites. But we were both involved with the first custom generative AI implementation in New York City public schools about a year ago, May, and you could immediately see the impact on students and how much it could really support them in a lot of different ways that we've talked about here, but also how quickly you could put the tools together. And so when we left, we were just like, we have to do something in this space, but we need to partner with a lot of institutions and stakeholders to figure out how to do it right. So that's been the journey that we're on.
Hello. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Jana. I'm a student at the University of Central Florida. So I have a 13-year-old brother, and I realized a while back that he would use the phrase, just chat GPT it. And I was like, the phrase is Google it. But yeah. But him and all his friends and my sister who's 10, they would all just say, just chat GPT it. And that was a moment for me where I thought, and I'm one of those people, I won't really try something new unless everybody else is doing it, because I just won't be motivated to use it, you know? So thanks to that Gen Alpha, you know, I used AI a lot more, and it's been helping me a lot. So I received an email from my physics and chemistry professors. They were testing a new AI system at the university to act as a sort of on-command advisor. So I said, I don't want to participate, but do you need help? Mm-hmm. So I'm now helping. We're working with Campus Evolve, so thank you to Maria and Mary for starting this incredible company. It's been really helpful and I'm really enjoying it. So.
So hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Riley. I'm the Executive Director of AI Acceleration at Arizona State University, and apparently I do not spend enough time with Gen Alpha because nobody has ever said just ChatGPT it to me, and all I do is AI work day in and day out. So I'm missing the boat there. But at ASU, my team does work in developing platforms as well as products to help our community to be able to harness the power of generative AI. We have a cloud and model independent platform where we have over 49 different multimodal models available, where we keep all of our data in-house. We're not leaching any of our data out to third parties. We're able to securely integrate with our enterprise systems and our data lake and our data warehouse environment to be able to securely leverage our data and keep our data, which is something that's very important to protecting the privacy and safety and security of our students. It's something that we take extremely seriously. We also do a lot of work in the ethics space. We have at Arizona State University 9 design principles. Our 9th design aspiration is principled innovation. So what that means to us is the innovating. You may have heard we're required to say it or we get fired. ASU #1 in innovation 10 years in a row.
You get to keep your job.
Yes, I get to keep my job. Check. Rasmus was here. Rasmus, you saw it. Yes. Yes. And so we don't like to innovate we don't innovate for innovation's sake. We innovate for purpose and for impact. So principled innovation to us means innovating in a way that's in line with our charter, that really focuses on whom we include, not who we exclude, and how they succeed. Also in making sure that we're serving the communities and taking a fundamental responsibilities for the communities that we serve. And so moving forward with generative AI in a way that is aligned with those values, making sure we're using good use of our student resources, taking very seriously the fact that our students work very hard for the dollars that they then give to us for their education, making sure that we are good, thoughtful stewards of that. And so really focusing on studying the impact of generative AI and scaling in places where it is impactful and quickly walking away from places where it isn't and not wasting resources.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yep. All right, awesome. My name is Shmona Simpson. I'm the founder and CEO at Parity. So Parity is a social enterprise, and our tagline is essentially, we aim to make technology better for everyone. We all keep our jobs if we say this. Yeah.
You have witnesses.
Oh, yes, we have witnesses. Essentially, like, we focus in 3 areas. So it's really technology, strategy, and transformation work. We do a lot of research, and also we do product ideation and development work. And essentially, we want to ensure that your zip code or your race or your gender or your geography are not really predictors of how good a technology would serve you, right? And also your ability to access and harness innovation and to leverage it towards your dreams or your outcomes. And so that's kind of where we focus and help our clients to sort of move in that general direction. And we come to this through like deep, passionate equity, commitment, and alignment. And so that permeates everything we do, from how we work with our clients to how we design technology in a community-led fashion, where we really sit as allies and arbiters to really support our communities to build products that matter and that help and that serve their needs, and also to measure the efficacy of those products to ensure that we're actually doing what we say that we want to do and committing to the work that we're all here to drive. So thanks, Charles.
Yeah, excellent. And so just to make sure that we're all committing to our taglines, why don't we hear from Jana on how we're doing? How is the integration of AI both into your life, as a student, but overall, you talked a little bit about, on-command advisor and these sorts of things. How has AI so far impacted you at your university, right? In the classroom or in the advising office? How has it changed your relationship with your professors, for better or worse? Just any reflections?
I think for the most part, AI is doing pretty well. Classes are good. Everyone's happy. I will say that I do see some students who don't use AI very often, not because they don't like it, not because they have some fear of a dystopian society or anything. I just think a lot of people grew up being taught that some things are out there, it's just not yours for the taking, you know? And that's part of that's just something in education that it's a privilege that some of us have that a lot of us don't, you know? And I see that with a lot of my classmates, which is why I'm happy with the student user experience research I'm doing right now with AI, because I get to introduce it to them. But in terms of relationships with students and professors, I think it's going to be a lot better, actually, because part of the research I'm doing with this user experience is, well, the hope is that professors with AI, if students use AI to ask questions about their classes, to ask questions about a course, about homework, then a professor will have less workload for them. They'll have less emails coming in. So they'll wake up, they don't have 100 emails about little things a student would be able to find on a website, you know? Hopefully that would improve that quality of teaching as well. But there's a really nice balance as well, because in my mechanics class, we all write notes on paper, you know? I think you need that vigor, right? You need, like, you're frustrated, like the pencil needs to crush on the paper in the class. Nobody uses technology in that class at all. Even when we go to study in the library, like, we're writing on the board, like, we don't have any technology out. So I think AI is incredible until you reach a point where you just kind of say, okay, back to the basics. And I think that's a good thing. I think it provides a really good balance. I think it's really reassuring that that's just a certain point where it's time for humans to do the work in an old-fashioned way.
I really like that. Part of your answer there is, also touching on, the agency that colleges and universities have vis-a-vis the tech marketplace and all the change that's happening. And I'm curious, Shimona, from your perspective, do you think that tech changes are kind of just happening to colleges and universities and that they react to them, or do colleges and universities really shape the tech marketplace? I'm thinking in particular of MSIs and community colleges, and whether you believe the post-secondary ed tech space, the marketplace, is set up to serve all institutions well, or do some colleges and universities really lose out in tech developments while others are kind of setting the agenda?
Yeah, so thank you, Charles. So I would say the initiation of procurement for technology is not random, right? I think institutions have long had processes around a trigger for, like, why we buy something or why we engage. So we did a study a few years back that was funded by the Gates Foundation to really understand procurement. And so usually there's a trigger, like there'll be a needs assessment and we'll find, okay, we need this technology to execute particular outcome, or there may be a champion on campus that sort of wants to drive work or system-wide initiatives that change why we go out and procure and engage a technology. I think what was missing, though, is an alignment of vision and incentives with the wider marketplace. So the push is coming from the institution, but then the marketplace is then telling you what's available, right? And there is sometimes a disconnect there. So Charles, to your question of, like, are MSIs participating? I think there's an interesting confluence today where we're engaging privacy issues more, we're engaging equity more, we're engaging, like, data and the right to have your to know what happens with your data, and the right to, like, and actually us understanding the agency and our ownership and our own power, like all of us users and institutions, right? So this sort of confluence of things, I think, is actually permitting institutions to ask more questions of vendors and actually having more power in the marketplace. As Philip was talking about earlier today, like, a larger institution that is well-resourced or, is able to serve a lot of students at scale has a different buying power and a different arrangement with vendors. And so actually we're seeing more MSIs ask deeper questions. And I do think that in collaboration, right, they're able to sort of say, and advocate a little bit more for what they need today. But we do need to see more of that. Like, we are in a space where needs are not being met fully, right? And this creates the opportunity for co-design in a really, really critical way to actually have institutions and have users and students be sort of setting the agenda for what the technology is that they need, and then actually having the marketplace follow. So I think this is a really interesting watershed moment, and hopefully with AI, we're able to sort of leverage this to take forward tech development in a new direction.
Yeah.
Can I jump in here?
please
Because
do.
I want to totally extend what you were saying, because it's right on target. I used to be at Microsoft, led a lot of product development, and you would have kind of two sources for that. One, some guy that's a PM had a great idea, and he was going to build it and then take it to the customer. And the other approach is to start talking to education systems, say, what is your problem? And then work backwards from there to get really fine-tuned, user-centered design. But even with that, who you choose as your partner to do that initial co-development could not be more critical. And if you start with, the great, well-resourced institutions, you're going to build products for them. But like when I was at Microsoft, I said, if we're going to do new product development, we need to go to Fresno, California, and really go deep. And that's what we did. And so we got products developed that were much more oriented towards low-income, disadvantaged communities. I also learned the hard way that there's lots of ways to fail in this process. If you listen too much to I talk a lot with folks like you, and I get a sense of your concerns, the problems your institutions are facing, and I can develop a product or a product concept that you will love, and I can sell it to you. But we develop that product, and then you go out and say, let's have students try it. And that's a whole different picture. And the students, you have to start with the student, and you have to be very intentional. If you're going to impact, have a long-term impact on outcomes, you have to have large-scale student usage. And with that, you have to choose which students you're going to design with and for. And, you have to choose that with equity in mind if you're going to build those products. And I think that's what is challenging a lot of tech companies, especially in this AI space. This is brand new. And if there's a vendor that comes to you with an existing AI product, you need to ask those questions about who did you co-design this product with. And I think that nobody out there has a very sophisticated, tested, AI tool, generative AI tool, where they can prove the impact, because it's too soon. But I think now is the time. I think you should be looking for vendors who really are looking for a partner in co-development, not showing you a product and saying, this is it, do you want to buy it? It's much earlier stage in the process for getting your students served.
Well, I'm curious, so Elizabeth, not to, I don't think that will get you in trouble here, but don't be nervous by that prologue. But, in light of what, Maria just shared, so ASU has an example, a very prominent one of a formalized collaboration with OpenAI. And I'm curious, has it, met the sort of standards that we're kind of implying in this conversation, right? And so obviously I think, it'd be interesting to know what the nature of that relationship has been. Has OpenAI, built many features based on your feedback, or based on ASU's feedback, I should say. So I guess, can you explain the nature of that relationship and how it informs your perspective on the future of a collaboration between higher ed and major LLM players, the tech marketplace overall, especially in light of, what's just been shared around the criticality of, being inclusive and getting good requirements?
Yeah, so over a year ago, there was an article that came out where Sam Altman named 3 industries where OpenAI wanted to focus, and I can never remember the other 2, but the third was education. And so our collaboration officially began January 18th of this year. And it seems like it's been a lot longer, because we've accomplished a lot in a short period of time. But they've built several dozen features based on our feedback. And part of the collaboration there was to to be able to support OpenAI in creating a product for higher education that was compliant with our regulatory environment. I can't tell you, and I don't want to remember how many different people at OpenAI I had to explain what FERPA was and why it was important, and what we meant when we said things like FERPA. But they listened, and they took very seriously what it was that we said, the suggestions that we made, and incorporated many features to enhance a lot of the granularity of things that are really exciting, like account administration.
Sounds exciting.
It's very exciting. And to enable a lot of like automated account creation where we can have an audit trail within our own systems. With ServiceNow, they didn't have any of those capabilities before
You say what ServiceNow is, just for everybody.
ServiceNow, it's like, oh gosh, it's late in the day, and now I have to come up with
Don't be tired.
a pithy definition for ServiceNow. It's a place where that allows you to have kind of a one-stop shop for your technology, software, purchasing, deployment. You fill out web forms, you get accounts provision, and there's a lot of automation that can happen in the background. And it can also store a lot of knowledge-based articles so that people can look up and answer their own questions about technologies. Did I do okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
So the features were mostly like, so you're saying they took a lot of your feedback, they introduced dozens of features. It sounds like it's
Correct.
administrative, audit trail type stuff, things that those sorts of back-end tools like ServiceNow, that sort of like broad service desk, procurement operations, these sorts of things.
Automating accounts
Like
so that we could have an audit trail so that we didn't tick off our auditors and waste a lot of time being out of compliance with some of our regulations. And we also drove home to them that their product was way too expensive for education. And so we helped them to develop the ChatGPT Edu product, which is at a lower price point than the ChatGPT Enterprise product, but has all the same privacy and security features of that enterprise product. Now, it's still too expensive for our industry to be able to leverage, but it's at a way lower price point than it had been previously. So the nature of our collaboration was really helping them to understand our industry, and hey, if you want to play here, if you want to play in higher education, you cost too much. Like your security and privacy features aren't where they need to be. And I know that this is very easy for me to say from the place where I sit at Arizona State University, but I think in many ways you all can use that same lever when you're working with different vendors, because if they want to play in the higher education space, like you all are experts in what it takes to do that. And so bringing that to the table as kind of your value proposition to help to bring down some of those costs for your institution and help with doing some of that co-development using that knowledge, and you're willing to educate folks as a lever to be able to co-develop and make sure that you are getting something out of that co-development. Make sure you're getting something in terms of lower price points, in terms of guarantees for spending your time, effort, and energy making a product that will make somebody hopefully a lot of money down the road based on your feedback and your input.
Yeah, let's go into that a little bit. So, Maria or Shimona on this, what do you think about those points and those leverage points, and how colleges and universities can have a little bit more of that sort of negotiating power? I like the example you gave, or the example of the data you sit on. Like, what's your experience and advice on that as well?
Yeah. I think institutions do have power to negotiate, and it's on several dimensions. One is just access to your students, and to, not your student data, to your students themselves. In our projects, we've gone through massive IRB approvals. Takes a long time to get to those students, to get advisors and your faculty buy-in. This is for new product development. Because that's crucial, because the knowledge base layer is the key to making these new generative AI solutions really work effectively, relevantly. That knowledge base is all the data that goes into it, and it's largely that content data, right? Not your ones and zeros, structured old databases. It's your policies, it's what's on your website, that content data. And getting access to that that's not just public but is private, that's critical. And I think there's another layer to this that we should all be very much thinking about. It's an ethical layer. We talked, I think, this morning about, what are going to be the ethical boundaries of the new AI. And, every wave of technology has its unintended consequences. I'm a sociologist, love Max Weber, and unintended consequences are going to happen, through Facebook. None of us thought, evil would result. Mobile phones, the detriment of a lot of youth. So what's going to happen with this next generation of technology? And I'm struggling with this because it's not obvious, because it's taking the world's information and kind of averaging it. So it's not necessarily going to push people to the extremes. But who controls the content that goes into that knowledge base? Yeah. And I don't just mean the foundational models. I mean, like, if the RAG approach is used in your university and your content is used, what are the boundaries?
Sorry, what's the RAG approach?
Retrieval augmented generation that allows that knowledge base to be filled with your sort of private information, not the public information, which is things like your internal policies, the tacit knowledge, because that's how you're going to get a localized solution that's unique to your use case. And I'll just share one example of what I mean by the potential unintended consequences of who controls the knowledge base. So I was at a generative AI and ethics workshop a couple of weeks ago, and there was a guy who was talking about a new solution they had built for women farmers in Malawi, where they had a small app that a woman could use when she's farming to ask questions about seed quality or different factors. And they said, well, where'd you get your information on agricultural practices? And he said, oh, we've got the source of truth. We took the manual from the Department of Agriculture from Malawi. And it's like, is that the source of truth? That could be a very biased source of truth. It could ignore a lot of information. And those are areas where who controls that information that goes into a system and who controls the guardrails around that. That could be a potential area for real ethical risk.
Yeah, I liked the Facebook, we've been talking about taglines, so if it sounds like evil will result is still on the market. Shimona, is there anything you would add to that, or from your perspective?
Yeah, I have a lot of perspectives. So I did want to talk about the spectrum of co-design a little bit, because I think a lot of what we're talking about today, like if we think about this as a continuum, co-design is, to me, happening like much farther right. So I sort of like describe this continuum as, we have the funder-led or the big tech-led sort of like endeavors around technology. Sometimes they incorporate some of our perspectives. So you'll get, invited to something to kind of give data or to lend a perspective. And then there's what we call co-design, which is like, assuming like we work on this together. But at the different spectrum that we're talking about is really like having community-led and institution-led work. It changes who's leading the process. And I think we do have to begin to talk about co-design in practical and like real term ways, right? Because a lot of what we think of as co-design when we look at the power dynamics are actually, there's no co about it, right? Like, and so actually what we do want to be doing is thinking like community-led innovation. And so to your point around the data that's used, if we actually accept that AI, generative AI LLMs today, like there's information missing about all of our perspectives. And what we are at risk of, I think, Maria, as you named, was like, similarly to what we saw happen with predictive analytics, sort of being used in spaces around recidivism, being used to decide who gets a loan in the financial services or not. Like, these kind of models need to be constantly audited for the extent to which they're effective for all of us. And we need to continue to ask those questions for what we receive from vendors, if we are on the receiving, and indeed of what we co-design or what we are part of, right? To actually say, okay, like, is this benefiting us? And asking more hard questions of the technology that we're engaging with. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, just thinking about that and zooming out for a second to the student perspective on what these systems should look like as that gets incorporated into the co-design process. I'm curious, Jana, last night there was, I forgot who made the remark about how at Harvard there's the ChatGPT that they've built in their sandbox, and then there's the ChatGPT that we all access, and everybody was using the one that is publicly available and not using the sandbox because of privacy concerns. And I'm curious, what makes you more likely as a student to use one AI system over another? What do you take into consideration? Privacy, tool quality, other factors?
So me personally, I've never worried about privacy. It's probably not a good thing, but I've always understood that it's a two-way street. If I'm going to get a good quality tool, the company needs my data, and I have nothing to hide, so go ahead. But not. But a lot of us don't think that way. Some people were raised to believe that no, you shouldn't give your data out there because discrimination against things like demographic, those things exist. So I think I might just be an exception, to be honest, but I would say quality for sure. Like, that's what I look for in a tool, a good response. I took a class called Advanced Ethics in Technology, or Ethics in Advanced Technology, one of those. But something that we talked about in the class was, how should we treat AI the way we would treat a human? Like, super broad concept. I know we all know about this, but in the class it was sort of, communication within AI and how we perceive it. And while doing my research with student experience, and obviously, my brother and his ChatGPT, I would notice that a lot of people are actually really polite to the AI. And I think, hang on, we talked about this at lunch earlier. Is there a Dave here with us? Hi. So polite children for sure. And so a lot of people would be really polite to the AI, and they would like thank it after a question. They would say please. And at first this might seem kind of concerning because we would say, are we humanizing the AI? Are we lying to ourselves? Are we replacing humans? And it brings about a really concerning question. And I think my answer is actually no. I think it speaks more to our human nature of, the way we appreciate how information is given to us, the way we want to communicate with things, Because with Google, you just write in like keywords and you get a bunch of relevant search results. But I think this
You don't thank Google when you're done?
I don't thank Google when I'm done. But I do thank ChatGPT when I'm done, not because I'm scared it's going to take over the world or anything, but I think it does speak a lot to human nature and the way we tend to receive information, the way we tend to ask questions. And I think that says a lot of good things about us. I don't think it's a sense of us, taking the AI as something more than it is. And that's a problem we've been seeing with institutions, especially at UCF, trying to, implement the AI advisor. I have a feeling that they sort of underestimate us. And we know it's a tool. We know it's something that might give us incorrect information. That's something we've struggled with. But then on the flip side of that, when the institution makes decisions like this, and they have their reasons, I know they do, but it translates differently to us as students when we see these decisions being made. You know, it doesn't feel good to see an institution go, no, I don't think I don't think students will be able to use it properly. I don't think they'll use it enough. I also think for those students that I mentioned earlier that don't think it's theirs for the taking, it doesn't translate well for an institution not to want to help them and tell them this is a resource that you can use. So, but yeah, my answer is quality, for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting, just on the point, and I'm curious if there's other thoughts on this in the panel or in the room, but the whole anthropomorphizing of the AI, I know that personally, I don't, to your point, I was gonna say guilty of it, but I don't feel bad about it. I don't know how to relate any other way to it, but I remember hearing on a podcast that there was this theory on why ChatGPT everybody was kind of experiencing some slowness in December, and I had heard, they said it was because a theory was, because nobody knows, that ChatGPT thought it was December and there's the holidays and vacation, so it was operating a little slower, which made my mind explode. I did put it back together, but so then I've noticed saying things like "we're on a deadline," or things like that in these types of optimizations. I don't know if they really matter very much. But yeah, just to that. Well, first, is there any thoughts on the anthropomorphizing point? No.
I think it's super risky. I think
Okay.
it's super, super risky. I think Gianna's absolutely right that students know the difference. In terms of using, I think there's a point though. I saw a piece of research a couple years ago about they were asking students whether or not they felt their teachers knew their name. And as the older they got, the more they said, no, my teacher has no idea what my name was. And that sense of belonging and of being known is very important to the learning process. And I don't think we should go to anthropomorphizing, but I've heard over and over again from students, I wish somebody knew who I was, in a large institution. And so one of the things we're trying to build into our solution is a way of personalizing it, taking for granted that we're not suggesting that the tool is a person, but that the AI system knows enough about the student that it can, when it responds, it makes the student feel known. Right? It's a different thing than building a relationship, but if the tool can respond in a way that says, hey, I know you're interested in nursing, I know you're in this region of Washington State, and I found out through 3 questions ago that you're a veteran, then I can produce a set of recommendations for you that are very much about who you are. I think that's a way that we can start to navigate some of these waters.
It's interesting. My experience has been so different because for us at Parity, when we talk about this community-led sort of development process we've been on, at the time that we began creating AI-powered tools in collaboration with our institutions, a lot of our institutions at the time that are broad access and a lot are MSIs weren't actually of the perspective that they necessarily wanted AI tools in front of students at the time that we started. What they did want and what they were responsive to was saying, hey, if this can take burden off of us, right, to free up our time to do more high touch student work, that's what we're into. And so the products that we have at Parity are actually very institution facing. So they're more thinking about, taking institution data, helping them power their operations, right? Whether it's your finance or your handbooks or your procurement processes to allow, to essentially free up administrators to do that work. And so we're coming from, I guess, a different angle, but what we have enjoyed about that from the co-design perspective, I think our experience is very similar to what you had with OpenAI with Anthropic, coming together in collaboration with the institutions and then working with Anthropic really to drive a product that is for higher ed, that has equity in mind, right, and is truly a community-led sort of co-design praxis. I think has been producing interesting sort of results for institutions. And so that's kind of been the place that we've been sitting in terms of co-design. Yeah.
So just on that, and I also want to be mindful, we've got 10 minutes, so I would like to, after this, also just open it up to the crowd. I'm sure there's going to be mics going around, but do you mind unpacking or exemplifying some of those operational bottlenecks that you're hearing from colleges and universities, and like where you're going in terms of trying to handle or solve it with AI?
Yeah, so the first use case that we started with was really around procurement. Apparently, like what we learned is that this is a very long process, like requires a lot of internal alignment. And so really creating, an AI solution that actually is going to have the bot in place to like say, okay, what do we need? Like have ability for, people to collaborate across departments and to sort of move a process based on the information that we had in our partnerships with our 10 institutions around what is good procurement, what's good RFP, like what's a good process. So like we sort of started there. We look into areas around like finance, right? And how like can we use the LLM to predict and create budget templates and like all these other like real materials that institutions need today, right? To kind of take burden off of administrators, people sort of doing all this busy work. And what we have heard, right, is that, okay, this really frees us up. We're experiencing, what took 9 months takes 2 weeks now, right? And so they're then able to kind of spend their time supporting students in real ways. And so that's something that we've been really excited to see.
Excellent. Other questions or comments? And I like how, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Angela Romans, and I'm the Executive Director of Innovation for Equity. This question's been rattling around in my head, and I was going to ask it at the last panel, but I'll ask it now. It's about relationship. And so you had an extended conversation about anthropomorphism, right? Last year, Cynthia Brazel, who leads the, robot group here at MIT in the Media Lab, asked a question, what is the human-robot relationship? That's how she phrased it. And what is the human-human relationship, and how are they different? And how do we teach young people how they're different? And it just kind of blew my mind, and it's still been rattling around in my head. And so today, there's been a lot of conversation about this sort of similar topic, right? President Abdullah talked about, what is the thing that students want? Human interaction, humans and humans. And Cecilia brought up also, but if an AI or a robot can anticipate my needs, maybe I want to interact with that more. Maybe I want more of a relationship that anticipates my needs. And then and I'll wrap up, in another breakout earlier today, we heard that one of the use cases for AI could be that the reports back from students are that the AI was more empathetic was the word that was used. And I guess in the room we sort of said maybe that means less judgmental, right, than actual human TAs in STEM. And as someone who studied STEM, I can identify, yes, sorry, STEM TAs are not very nice. Or some of them are not very nice, right? So maybe the AI is nicer. Maybe you want to be more known. So I'm raising this about both for Jana, because you said, sometimes I just want to be analog and I guess be human, right? So I guess my question for you is, how do you know, or what are your considerations about when you just want to be human, or because humans need humans, or when the AI is better? And it's also a question to the group, how are we actually thinking about relationship as these tools get more and more and more empathetic or relational, or whatever words we want to use? Where are the guardrails, and what is actually humans need humans, but what do we need about humans versus what can AI actually provide for us that might be better? So it's big questions, but these are rattling around in my head from both last year and then sort of threads to the conversation from this year. So whoever wants to tackle that, both on the panel and then just for the group to think about.
Okay, I suppose I'll go first. Great question. I love that. I love the philosophical questions surrounding this. But I think in my case at least, and I think most of us can agree, in a room of, not this room, but in a different room of neutral people, someone might prefer a highly empathetic robot, right? But I think in a room...
We think you are.
Yeah. No, please continue.
But I think also in a room of highly empathetic robots, I would prefer a human who is empathetic, can make eye contact, we can have a conversation, we can talk about our lives, our upbringings, our backgrounds. You can't do that with a robot, you know? So with a robot, it's more of what can you provide for me? I'm not providing anything for the robot. Whereas with people, it goes both ways, you know? Well, I guess for the robot, it's my privacy and data, but that also goes to a human in the end, so, you know.
Unless there's a robot behind.
Yeah, robot controlling the robot. But for the younger generation, though, it might be a little bit different because we can differentiate between I'm interacting with a robot now, I'm interacting with technology now, versus I'm interacting with a person right now. But with the younger generation, they grow up with so much technology and so much artificial intelligence that it might get to a point where the empathy might not be as present as it is right now. And I say this, but I'm a very optimistic person. I don't think this will be a problem once, once they grow up, because as a society, we just keep getting better and better for the most part. And I think that's a good sign, even if, we have little slips now and then. But yeah, for the most part, have you guys heard of Uncanny Valley? No? Yeah?
No.
Yeah? Yeah, you see videos on that, and then it's people looking at slightly strange looking people, and you can tell that there's something off about these people. They usually end up being like AI generated, strange human images with like 11 fingers or something like that. But I think there's that innate human desire to connect with a person, because you're not a robot. You're not going to connect to a robot the way you would with a person. But I guess my original point was, it's what you can give and take. I'm not giving anything to a robot, honestly. So.
It's the blurry eyes. Like that always gets me. And
Yeah.
AI generated.
The too many fingers gets
yeah,
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was gonna, just to respond, I think to play devil's advocate, we do need to be careful with what we're saying when we said like, okay, is it, what of it is providing a human touch? Today, the LLMs are predicting, like essentially with highly refined probabilistic estimates, the next word in a sentence, right? And period. And so because that is what it is, and also we're in a space where, the corpus, like what has been provided for it to predict the next word in a sentence, there is a lot missing from that, not just from communities in this country, but like globally, like because we consider our, the US, maybe this is the nexus of what we're talking about with Gen AI, but like, we are, 300 million in a world of billions. And so we do need to have a perspective. Like one of the pieces of work we did was to actually test for both knowledge and reasoning ability in like core areas around like mathematics or law or medicine, right? Like how an LLM was responding to us in knowledge and both reasoning. And so we find in areas of like, particularly equity, and we're talking about like gender, race, sexual orientation, all these things, its ability to deduce and predict that next word in a sentence, or predict from like a series of examples to be really simple, like what a preferred and correct outcome was, is extremely limited as we're actually speaking about specific areas that matter to us in the room today. And so I do think we need to be careful, right? And especially like what we are telling our students, right, about how they're engaging with AI. And so we can see it as a tool, right, that supports us and supports learning, and perhaps not yet quite replacing the human that's in the loop.
I
Oh, go ahead, please.
start jumping in.
No, do it.
I don't think of it so much in terms of a person to a person, like the AI being a person. I think there's an opportunity for it to be kind of the AI to, and please, I'd love to hear criticisms of what I'm about to say, because it's just my idea, and I think it needs to be broader. But I think there's an opportunity for, we all talk about students needing a sense of belonging and confidence, and but at the same time, institutions are incredibly complex to navigate for the student. And so, and institutions provide all of these resources, but still students don't know about them, don't know how to navigate them, and your most disadvantaged students are the ones who most struggle with those things. So and there's a broad distrust of public institutions, right? And at the same time, you have, Netflix and Spotify, and I don't think, they know me, they know a lot about me, but I don't think of them as a human, right? I think, yeah, they have my data because, as she said, they're going to produce good results for me. So an institution can use this new generative AI to bring those resources to the student and have the student feel like, oh, the institution has my back. I think that's a great opportunity for us.
So we have time for one question or one criticism, but not both.
Hi, I'm Mary, and I actually work with Maria and Jana. So I actually have more of two comments. One is a fun one. There's actually been studies recently that have shown that being polite to AI improves the quality of the response, which is interesting. It has to do with the way that the models are trained and the corpora of information that they're trained on, and changing the context of your prompt. Dr. Chen has recently found, like, if you say that you're SpongeBob or whatever, it's going to give you a lower quality response. So those are just some interesting bits
That's
of trivia.
why.
But, I don't know if anyone watched the OpenAI announcement a few months ago where they did the speech-to-speech, and Mira Murati was on stage, and then her poor product manager had to demo this piece of tech that clearly wasn't working yet. And what I noticed most about that is that with speech-to-speech AI, he constantly interrupted it. So the AI would be giving its typical long, rambling response, and thank you for asking, and here, let me tell you all the 55,000 things that's in my memory bank. And he would just interrupt it and keep going. And I actually found that really disturbing because I think that, and this isn't to say anthropomorphize or not, but I feel like we already dehumanize each other online so much, and we don't need more practice being rude. Like, we don't need more practice with a bot. We do it enough. And I think there's something there. I think there's some risk there that we should be careful of, especially as we are rapidly coming into the age of rolling out emotional AI. And if you try to use the speech-to-speech models that are now available, they have emotion injected into their voice. And what does that mean when our kids are growing up talking back to these bots that are feeling sad or feeling happy and treating them like they're not human? What does that mean? What are we teaching them? I think it's important to think about that, and I think about it a lot.
Excellent. Well, with the utmost politeness, thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists, and let's give them a hand.
Thank you.